Welcome. If you walk into any modern organization today, whether it is a multinational corporation, a charity, or a government agency, you will inevitably encounter a specific vocabulary. You will hear about strategic plans, strategic visions, strategic leadership, and strategic human resources. It seems that everything must now be strategic to be considered important. But have you ever paused to ask why? Why did strategy migrate from the battlefield to the boardroom, and then to the hospital ward and the university campus? It wasn't always this way. This ubiquity of strategy represents a profound shift in how we organize our world. In this three-part series, we're going to explore the emergence, definition, and domains of strategic management accounting, or SMA. We are basing this exploration on a comprehensive analysis of the field. Our journey is structured around three core themes. First, we must understand the history and the context, the strategic turn. Second, we will define SMA and explain how it differs from traditional accounting. And third, we will look at the specific domains where these strategies play out. In this session, Part 1, we are focusing entirely on that first theme, the strategic turn. We need to understand the massive political, economic, and technological shifts that created the world we manage today. Let's begin by looking at the landscape. The rise of strategic management accounting is not an accident of history. It is tied to extensive transformations that began roughly in the 1970s and 80s. These transformations can be explained as the neoliberalization of politics, the globalization of economic entities, the digitalization of technologies, and the virtualization of spaces. Collectively, these shifts created a new kind of competitive condition. To understand this, we have to look back at what came before. Before this strategic turn, nations largely operated under protectionist doctrines. Economies were relatively closed. If you were a domestic producer, you were shielded by tariffs and duties. The prevailing ideology was welfarism and state ownership. Governments managed major industries through centralized planning, and markets were viewed as spaces that needed to be regulated to protect the public. It was a world of stability and predictability. Then came the shift. This diagram helps visualize what happened next. We saw the neoliberalization of politics. Influenced by economists such as Milton Friedman and political leaders such as Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, the world moved away from state-centric welfare toward a market-based ideology. The central idea was that competition is the ultimate principle of justice. The world was asked to believe that if the market decides the price, that price is fair. This had a domino effect. Economies opened up. Industries were privatized. The focus of management shifted from administrative stability to shareholder value maximization. Even the public sectors adopted private sector doctrines, treating citizens like customers and hospitals like businesses. This is the neoliberal competitive condition. Competition became the air we breathe, necessitating a new set of calculations to manage it, which is where SMA begins to emerge. Parallel to this political shift was a geographical one: globalization. Globalization of markets, hierarchies, and networks of production and exchange, as well as regulation. As borders opened, corporations didn't just sell globally, they disintegrated their structures globally. We saw the rise of global supply chains, where a headquarters might be in London, design in New York, and manufacturing in Vietnam. This required a cosmopolitan approach to management. You couldn't just walk to the factory floor to check on costs anymore. You needed complex accounting systems, enterprise resource planning, and supply chain management to monitor activities across the planet. Then we must layer on the technological revolution. The digitalization of technologies and the virtualization of spaces changed the speed of business. We moved from a mechanical world to a digital one, from physical marketplaces to virtual platforms like Amazon. In this digital world, competition is traceable and analyzable in real time. Every mouse click, every transaction creates a data point. This big data allows managers to reconstruct customer profiles and predict competitor moves instantly. This visibility is what makes modern strategic management accounting possible. It provides the dashboard for driving the organization. So, we have these massive contextual shifts: neoliberalization of politics, globalization of markets, hierarchies, and networks of production, exchange, and regulation, digitalization of technologies, and virtualization of spaces. But there is another piece to this puzzle, something we can call epistemic dynamics. Episteme refers to how we know and understand the world. When the world changed, our old ways of knowing, our old bureaucratic models, stopped working. In the old world, the hero of the organization was the bureaucrat. Bureaucracy was about rules, stability, and depersonalized power. It was designed to minimize risk and ensure uniformity. But in a volatile, hyper-competitive global market, bureaucracy looked rigid and slow. Enter the consultocracy. As the strategic turn took hold, a new class of intellectuals emerged: management consultants and gurus. Think of figures like Michael Porter or Robert Kaplan. They critiqued the old administrative ways and offered new epistemic tools, such as the 5 forces model, the value chain model, the balanced scorecard, and activity-based costing and management. These weren't just neutral tools. They taught managers to view every situation as a competitive situation. They empowered managers to stop just administering and start strategizing. This rise of the consultancy industry, now a multi-trillion-dollar sector, cemented strategy as the dominant language of management. They created the demand for the very techniques we study in strategic management accounting. However, there is a final, crucial dimension to this strategic turn that we cannot ignore. It is perhaps the most urgent. We are talking about the global sustainability agenda. The neoliberal and globalized expansion we just discussed created massive economic growth. But it also deepened the contradictions of our world. We now face a reality that is risky, volatile, and often unjust. Issues of ecological collapse and social inequality have moved to the forefront. Modern strategy is no longer just about beating the competitor. It is about survival in a physical sense. Organizations are now forced to integrate ESG, environmental, social, and governance factors, into their core decision-making. Management accountants are finding themselves counting carbon emissions just as rigorously as they count cash. They are assessing the risks posed by climate change and by supply chain slavery. Let's look at a concrete example to ground all of this. Consider the case of Nike. Nike is the prototype of the strategic turn. Founded in the 60s, it pivoted in the 70s to a model that defined the neoliberal era, designing shoes in the US while outsourcing manufacturing to low-cost Asian economies. It became a hollowed-out corporation, capitalizing on open global markets. Then came the digital shift. Nike aggressively embraced virtual spaces, using apps and data analytics to build direct relationships with consumers and bypass traditional retail. They made the competition virtual and data-driven. But Nike also hit the wall of sustainability. In the 90s, their global supply chain became a liability when labor abuses were exposed. This reputational crisis forced them to strategize differently. Today, their Move to Zero campaign, aiming for zero carbon and zero waste, is a central part of their strategy. They are tracking carbon footprints and water usage across that vast global network. Nike illustrates that you cannot separate accounting from the context. Their management accountants are now dealing with global logistics, digital data mining, and carbon costing simultaneously. So, where does this leave us? We have established that strategic management accounting didn't just appear out of thin air. It is the child of a specific moment in history. It emerged because the stable, protectionist, bureaucratic world gave way to a volatile, global, digital, and hyper-competitive one. It emerged because we needed new tools to navigate a landscape defined by neoliberal competition, and now, increasingly, by the urgent demands of sustainability. This strategic turn is the foundation, but knowing why it happened is only the first step. The next logical question is, what exactly is this new toolset? How do we define it? And how does it fundamentally differ from the financial accounting that came before it? In part 2 of this series, we will tackle exactly that. We will move from the history to the definition, distinguishing SMA from its predecessors and understanding its military roots. But for now, consider this. If the world has changed this much in 50 years, and accounting has had to reinvent itself to keep up, what does the next turn look like? Thank you for listening to part 1. Join me next time as we define the machinery of strategy.